This is Business Edge on News Central. I'm Tolulokwe Adelere Balogun. Our headline story: U.S. car maker Ford to invest $1 billion in South Africa. Now, cheerful news for South Africa as U.S. car manufacturer Ford Motors has announced plans to invest $1 billion, about 15.8 billion rand, in production. What kind of impact will this have on the economy of Africa's most industrialized nation? How will this play out? That's our focus today. We'll also touch base with a few stories we're keeping our eyes on with NC4 to watch before we wrap up the show. Welcome. This is Business Edge. Now, U.S. car manufacturer Ford Motors said it is investing $1.05 billion in its South African manufacturing operations. This includes upgrades to expand production of its Ranger pickup truck. This is the largest investment the firm is making in South Africa since it began operations 97 years ago. The investments include $683 million for technology upgrades and new facilities at its plant in Silverton, a suburb of the administrative capital, Pretoria, and also $365 million to upgrade tooling at major supplier factories. Additionally, the plant will manufacture Volkswagen pickup trucks as part of the Ford VW Alliance. The expanded production is looking to create 1,200 jobs with the company in South Africa, also increasing the local workforce now to 5,500 employees, while adding an estimated 10,000 new jobs across the car maker's supplier network. According to Andrea Cavallero, operations director of the company's international market group, the investment also aims to increase Ford's installed capacity in South Africa from 168,000 to 200,000 vehicles. Now, joining me on Business Edge is the Chief Investment Officer, Ovid Capital, Ekos Akpokabayen, who is joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa. Ekos, welcome to the show again. Thank you so much for joining me. Okay, I think you are muted there. If you could just quickly unmute yourself so we can have this conversation. All right, there you go. Good to see you.
Good morning, Tolulokwe. How are you?
I'm great. So let's look at this investment, which seems to be coming at such a very serious and opportune time for South Africa. Do you think this is more of how the administration may have wooed Ford to South Africa, or this is more due to the available infrastructure that the country possesses? Is this a political win for Cyril Ramaphosa?
Before I answer that, I must say there's been good news this week in South Africa, and this is one of the good news we received. On Monday, we received a vaccine from India, and that was good news, and restrictions were reduced. And on Tuesday, we got this announcement. I think it's a combination of both. It's a political will for the president. I think this is a win for him. I think also it's also the infrastructure in the country. Why I say so, I'm sure you know, or just to inform your viewers, we have about 8 manufacturing car companies in the country currently. And Ford has been here since the 1920s. And the president recently announced they're allowed to be here for another 100 years.
Wow.
Just to mention, General Motors left in 2017. Because of political infighting and the labor laws. I think that has been strengthened. The problem was because of the labor laws, minimum wage, which went a lot of being political. Investors didn't want a minimum wage. But I think the president and the president team has been able to convince Ford here. But the infrastructure is there. But I'm sure, and I know there was a lot of political will to make them put such investment.
So good news to hear. So let's get into some of the numbers around this good news. So the numbers in this conversation are great. 1,200 direct jobs and 10,000 additional ones somewhere down the line. What do you think the knockdown effects of this investment by Ford are in terms of the South African economy?
Oh, wonderful, beautiful news. I'm one of those who, every opportunity I have, I say we prefer and we want to see this kind of investment. We know about a lot of companies prefer to do foreign direct investment into the country, but this shows a lot of will. And I must mention that if you look at the two countries, Ford is a United States company, and South Africa exports about 6% and imports about 7% from the US. And, there's a balance. For Ford to be putting more investment, over $1 billion, is a very welcome development. And this will add to revenue, which we are looking for. It will create more employment. More workers will be able to pay tax, and this is very welcome.
You have mentioned the important word tax, and that's a word that we've been hearing a lot of across the African continent. So more workers will be able to pay tax. So again, that seems to be good news we'll be celebrating down the line. But you've also mentioned the fact that Ford is an American company, and this is coming at the right time considering the commencement of the African Continental Free Trade Area on January the 1st. Now, given the fact that Ford is a foreign company that has this investment on the continent, it's also an opportunity for Ford to have a launch pad to the rest of the continent. Do you think that whatever is produced in South Africa through Ford, through this investment, will it pass the rules of origin? That's one of the major instruments of the trade area agreement.
We have to be very careful and look at that. I will say now that, first of all, the South Africa car industry is very well established. And South Africa car industry manufactures about 500,000 vehicles every year. Some of that consumption, there's a little bit of that consumption is within South Africa, but about 250, more than 50% goes to Europe. So the market is necessarily not in Africa. The market is outside of Africa. And in fact, Ford has secured that market elsewhere. But if Ford wants more investment to look at other areas in Africa, I think this will be properly welcome. I think you must understand it's a foreign company, but its establishment is in South Africa, so it will be for South Africa. It will not be operating as Ford United States in Africa. It's for South Africa. It's creating jobs in Africa. It's putting income in Africans' hands. And I think the African Free Trade Agreement will be able to accommodate Ford if it looks to expand within the continent.
Let's go back to something you mentioned earlier, which was the fact that there are a number of car manufacturers that are based in South Africa, but we did see GM leave, as you said, labor issues as well as some political tussles. What was it about Ford, or what was it considering their decisions that made it possible for them to not only be in South Africa for the past 97 years, as you said, the president has approved them staying in the country for another 100 years, but what is it about Ford and how they've made decisions or operated in the South African business environment that has seemed to have made them successful when others have, in a way, maybe struggled or others have had to close shop?
Ford is a very big American company, and they have different types of vehicles. And if you look at the investment here in South Africa, they've targeted a major market. If you look at Southern Africa, the market in Southern Africa, there's a lot of safaris and a lot of rough roads, and this kind of vehicle suits this region, and it suits them to manufacture it here and export it to markets in Europe, which is cost effective for them than the US. And of course, if you look at the wages in Africa obviously will be better than in the US and in the tax incentive. But I must mention that without saying much, but sadly in 2017. BMW was supposed to invest about $5 billion in the next 10 years. And we lost that to another country. And it was unfortunate because there was interference with the finance minister and there was political instability. So not just GM leaving, we also lost investment with BMW. But I would say in Africa, South Africa has established itself as a good destination for car manufacturers. I think Ford noticed that, and there's a lot of positives in that to drive this destination.
All right. So recently, President Cyril Ramaphosa said that the country has a well-developed automotive industry with advanced manufacturing capabilities and appropriately skilled workforce and access to growing markets. He also said that this would help to expand and transform the country's manufacturing base, improve its export capacity, create employment, and also develop skills. Now, do you think this investment will help with technical knowledge transfer, which seems to have been a major issue for many African countries, also improving the value chain gains for South Africa as well? What really does South Africa stand to gain from this?
South Africa stands to gain everything with some of the things you've mentioned. Knowledge transfer, having a value in terms of equity, the company here creating jobs. It has a lot to gain. I must mention that the car manufacturing industry in South Africa is the largest manufacturing sector in the South Africa economy. It is the largest. It adds 77% to our GDP, and whereby 4% is for manufacturing and 3% is for retail. That industry produces about direct 120,000 jobs. And indirect job in the entire sector is about 500,000 jobs. So I think what the president has done, they have negotiated with the Minister of Trade and Industry, a sector that was doing well, that is the largest, to continue to attract foreign investors and foreign companies like Ford to continue to be here, to continue to employ more people. So, of course, this is good news for the country, and there will definitely be knowledge transfer.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we also have to talk about the fact that there is a deal in play as well that is a Ford VW alliance. How could that affect the possible revenue or taxes that the South African government can make? And what do African countries, other than South Africa, what can they learn from this? South Africa is still a very attractive investment destination. That conversation, the parts of it, will continue after this break. Stay with us. This is still Business Edge on News Central, and we're talking about American car manufacturer Ford's announcement of a investment in South Africa and how all of that will play out. My guest is still with me now. Ekos, let's talk about what Ford has said in terms of being ambitious on the environmentally conscious side. Now, Ford said that they aim, or rather it aims, to make its Silverton plant in Pretoria entirely energy self-sufficient and carbon neutral by 2024. Now, for those who don't know, carbon neutral or net zero carbon is a term used to describe the state of an entity, such as a business, a service, a product, or event where the carbon emissions caused by said entity have been balanced out by funding of an equivalent amount of carbon savings elsewhere in the world. This is very ambitious, but we also know that this is where the world is moving towards. Do you see other companies following this path as well anytime soon?
I think other companies have to follow suit. There's no giving. I think, in my opinion, we were delayed 5 years. I mean, we all celebrated when we saw what happened in 2015, the climate agreement. I think for 5 years, the world was pulled back. And when you see an American company taking this initiative, you know things are set to change. I mean, this is great news. If the giant companies, the big companies that goes in billions of dollars are taking foot, small companies will follow suit, and this becomes the standard. The world has to recognize this is a fact. Science has proven it. And so carbon-free is the way to go. And I see more companies following suit, and I do hope they follow suit. They have to follow suit.
All right, and if they follow the big companies, it means no one has an excuse. So we also know that the Silverton plant is meant to produce some VW trucks, and that's because of the Ford VW alliance. And there's also another alliance, that's Nissan and Renault. Now, this is beneficial for the car makers since it reduces production costs and also helps to drive up the capacity of the workers. But how does this affect how much tax or how much revenue or how much money governments can make from these car manufacturers when these type of deals are in place?
Look, Tolu, I don't think we should be worrying all the time. We can't squeeze everything everywhere.
We need more. We need more. We know South Africa needs more.
yes, we should encourage more investment, more companies to come in to create more jobs.
Okay.
This kind of collaboration is all over the world. It's all over the place. It's not new in South Africa. It will always continue to take place. Of course, it's not just to reduce costs. It's one technology is better than the other at different times. So this continue to happen. So, but I know, you're looking for more revenue. More revenue will come. What is important? Let this investment come in. Let these companies expand. Let it be in the country, and let it create more jobs.
And talking about the investments, do you foresee more of such capital investments in South Africa in 2021? It's the continent's most industrialized nation, so that is definitely of interest to anybody wanting to invest in the continent. It's a country that's in recession, but working its way out of it as well. And of course, we've all suffered from the pandemic this past year. So with that, investments may not be as much as anticipated. We've seen the numbers as to how much was supposed to come in and how much has actually come in. But with 2021 having kicked off, do you see more of these type of capital investments coming towards South Africa?
So for all, I would say I hope so, and I see so. One of the things is that when you see the kind of company Ford and the initiative they have done, a lot of things are done in the background and a lot of indicators and factors. Some other companies that were scared and looking at these factors and thinking, no, when they see the bigger companies coming in, they'll follow suit. And if you look at South Africa, currently, unemployment is about 60%, and I mean 30%, and youth unemployment is about 60%. That's not good. That's not been good. It's been rising. So seeing this kind of initiative, we need as much as possible. And it's a circle. Once there's unemployment, there's crime, there's inequality, and all of this. This is the kind of investment we want to see. And it's an indicator that Ford and the big companies and some of the banks, they are comfortable with the investor sentiment. They're comfortable with the minimum wage. They are comfortable with the current labor laws. And there's appetite for growth. This is a good sign. So I see more investment coming in, and I'm hoping some way the BM deal is going to be back on the table.
All right, so we know this is competition. Countries are competing to offer the best deals for these type of investments, but it's also an opportunity for others to learn lessons. So what lessons do you think other African countries can learn in order to attract these type of capital investments? What is making South Africa so attractive? You've mentioned the labor laws now. You've mentioned attractive minimum wage. You've mentioned attractive policy, because flip-flopping administrations and policies can always scare people off. So what else can other countries do to also make themselves competitively attractive for such capital investments?
First of all, what is important in that question? Each country's government, they need to understand a government is not a business. A government is there to regulate and provide enabling environment. Government are not supposed to interfere. One of the big reasons we lost a lot of investment was when we saw government interfering in our institutions, especially the judiciary institutions. African government must strengthen their institutions and create laws to attract foreign investment like this, not just FDIs. Labor laws are very important, and the foreign laws, what foreign companies can own in the country is very important to attract this. And most I would say, what is important is to stay away from corruption. Investors don't like corruption in the country. They also watch the corruption index and also look at long term. Don't look at immediate. Look at long term and the infrastructure, and you can attract. And before I forget, don't other African countries. You can see South Africa has 8 car manufacturing, and they're probably good in this, and they want to continue. If you're good in cocoa or you're good in tea or what sector you're good in, try to concentrate and put more laws to attract foreign investment. Don't compete unnecessarily in different sectors. I think this will help, and we can know this country is good in this sector, and that country is good in that sector, and this is how we can develop. And I also want to mention quickly, if you look at Vietnam has benefited from the rise of China. When China was becoming a developed nation, Vietnam has taken opportunity to manufacture. And I've been saying that Africa needs to position itself, because the world is moving to IR4, and they're looking for new markets where they can invest to do some of this kind of work. And Africa is the best place at the moment.
All right. For those of you who may be uninitiated, IR4, I am assuming that's the fourth industrial revolution?
Correct.
All right. And that's a conversation that businesses and governments, as you said, around the world definitely need to have. Ekos Akpokabayen, I'm getting that. Thank you so much for joining us. He is the Chief Investment Officer for Ovid Capital, joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Tolu, and thank you to your viewers.
All right. Before we wrap things up, we have to touch base with NC4 to watch, and let's quickly get into that right now. We start, interestingly enough, right back where we ended, somewhere around South Africa anyway. Now, De Beers, the world's biggest diamond company by value, is forecast to report $650 million. That's about 9.7 billion rand in rough diamond sales for its first cycle of 2021. Following strong diamond jewelry sales over the holiday season in the U.S. Now, the chief executive, Bruce Cleaver, said that rough diamond sales were also supported by expected demand ahead of the Chinese New Year and the Red Day, Valentine's Day. The Nigerian government and the World Bank have commenced the process of rebasing Nigeria's gross domestic product. The GDP is the final value of the goods and services produced within a nation's geographic boundaries during a specified period of time, usually within a year. The growth rate of a nation's GDP is an important indicator for economic performance of the country. The international oil benchmark Brent crude rose further on Wednesday, trading near $59 per barrel. Oil prices were boosted by a drawdown in the United States crude and petrol stocks that added to demand recovery hopes, fueled by the forecast by major producers of a deficit in the market this year. And finally, a new study from Morocco's High Commission for Planning revealed that the country's unemployment rate has increased from 9.2% in 2019 to 11.9% in 2020. The increase includes all categories of the population and is the result of the rise of unemployment in rural areas, which is 5.9% now, and urban areas, which is 15.8%. And that's all we have for you on this edition of Business Edge. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. We'll have more business and financial news and information for you on our website. Go to www.newscentral.africa. And don't forget that you can download our mobile app on Play Store and Apple App Store. I'm Tolu Lokwe Adeleru Balogun. I'll see you next time.